kids. Today we're going to talk a little bit about lunar phases. Lunar meaning moon, and phases meaning we only see certain portions of the moon during certain times of the month. Because we know that while we are orbiting or revolving around the sun, the moon is orbiting around Earth. The sun is in the center of our solar system and it is just spinning. So you're going to see a diagram today that looks a lot like this, okay? So in order to put this diagram together, you just need to color your Earth, color your sun, okay? And then we're going to be very specific about what we color over here for our moon phases. What I want you to do is take your colored Earth, you're going to cut it out, and you're going to glue it right here in the center. And just to give me a little bit more space on my notebook paper, I actually just cut my sun in half because it was going to take up too much room. So I need to be able to write as I go around here. Now, if you look, once you get this glued together, you're going to see that I have drawn a line down the center of each circle. So these circles are the moon. And I've drawn it down the center and I've shaded the left side, okay? Here's the reason why. This is going to help us better understand how the light from the sun is striking the moon and what portions of the moon we can see, okay? So there are how many phases? How many moons do you see on here? We have 8 lunar phases. So I want you at your paper to put lunar phases, and then we're going to add 8 because that's how many phases of the moon we see each month. So we're always going to start at this point, okay? So I want you to put a number 1 right here. Notice the moon is between the Earth and the sun. So guess how much of the moon we can see right here? None of it. You see, if I'm standing right here on Earth and I'm looking at the moon, I am looking at darkness. So this is when it looks like there is no moon in the sky, okay? This phase is called the new moon, okay? So it's like a brand new moon, and we can see none of it. So what we're going to do out here next to the name of the phase, we're going to draw what we see from Earth, okay? This is the moon. This side is lit because the sun's light is striking this side. However, from Earth, we're just seeing the dark side here, okay? So new moon, what can we see? You're going to draw a circle, and you're completely filling it in because we don't see any of the moon, okay? So now let's move. You notice your arrows are going counterclockwise. Now we're moving here to phase 2. And from Earth, I can start to see just a little sliver of the moon, okay? So as it's orbiting or it's revolving around Earth, remember this side is still what's getting the sun's light. This side is still dark. But from Earth, I can start to see just a little bit. So what does this look like in the sky? This is what we call a crescent moon, okay? So you can draw a circle if you want to. And then you're going to fill in the left side, and just a little sliver on the right is what we can see, okay? So just a little bit. This is called a waxing crescent, okay? This is the waxing crescent stage for the moon phase. So we can just barely see the right side of the moon. As we go on into the month, we're going to go to phase 3. Now, if I'm here on Earth and I'm looking at the moon, how much of the moon can you see? Right, you can see half of it. So we're going to be able to see this right half of the moon. And so this is what we call first quarter. Okay, the first quarter. And so if we draw what this looks like, you draw your circle, and it's literally this exact picture here. It's going to be dark on this side, and we're going to be able to see the right-hand side of the moon. Okay, now, this is a first quarter moon. If you think of the lunar phases as 1 here, phase 3 here, right, 5 and 7. So these, we have moved a quarter of the way. It's just like if you went from 3 o'clock back to noon. That's taking up a quarter of the distance on a clock, okay? Same idea here, okay? So this is why it's called a first quarter moon, and you're only looking at the right-hand side. So then we move to phase 4. You'll notice we are looking at the moon from Earth, and now I'm able to see a lot more of the moon. so this is actually still in my waxing phase. Okay. And if any of you've ever watched the show iCarly before, there is a boy on there, really funny kid. His name is Gibby, right? And so this is called a gibbous moon, but I always think of Gibby from iCarly when I think of the word gibbous. And so this is a waxing gibbous moon. You could think of it as a waxing Gibby moon, right? And so we can see most of the moon here, not all of it yet, but most of it. So this phase, you draw your circle, and now I'm just going to barely shade in this left-hand side, which it looks like, man, it's so close to being a full moon, but I still can't quite see this left side. Okay, this is a waxing gibbous moon. Then we move across from our new moon to phase 5. Guess what we can see here? Yep, we're here on Earth, we're looking, and I can see this whole front side. So this is what we like to call a full moon. Okay, full moon. And we can see all of it. From Earth, we see the whole entire face. Okay, that's a full moon. So when we leave the new moon phase here, we move into what we call the waxing phases. Okay, and how I relate to remember this, if you think of the Karate Kid movies, I know those are really old. Those are around when I was a kid. His dojo teaches him, when he's trying to teach him some karate skills, to wax on and wax off. He's trying to show him some motions. So how I remember this is you're waxing on the light. We're gradually adding more light to the moon until we get to a full moon. Okay, so we're waxing on the light. And the other thing you can remember, if the moon is bright on the right, you're waxing on the light. Okay, so you see how when we move from a new moon here, it's starting to be bright on the right side of the moon. Bright on the right side here. We're bright on the right side until we get to a full. So if the moon is bright on the right, you are waxing on the light. Okay, till we get to the full moon here, phase 5. Now we're going to move into a different set of phases. These are called the waning phases, okay? So if you wax on the light, now we're going to wane off the light, okay? So phase 6 here, from Earth looking back, okay? Now it's actually going to be moving in the opposite. So this moon, draw our little circle here, this is going to be called a waning gibbous. Waning, because we're waning off the light, okay? From Earth, looking back, it's going to be dark on this side. And from Earth, it looks like that the left side of the moon is lit, okay? So you always have to think about this from Earth's perspective of what we can see. We'll do some other diagrams with the moon phases because it can get a little confusing if you're looking at it from the Earth's perspective or just like we're seeing here, okay? Or are you looking at it from a different perspective, okay? So if I'm standing right here in North America and I'm looking back at this moon, it's going to appear as though the left side is the only side that's lit, okay? So you have to think about it. If you're standing here and you're looking back at it, it's the left side that is lit. So this is a waning gibbous. Gibbous meaning a bigger moon, okay? And so we have a waxing gibbous and a waning gibbous. Those are the brighter moons because we can see more of it. Those two phases, notice both your gibbous phases are right next to the full moon because obviously that's where we can see the most of the moon, okay? Now let's move to stage 7. We call this a last quarter. So this was our first quarter. Now this is our last quarter moon. And from Earth, what can you see? So if I'm standing here and I'm looking back this way, it looks like the left side is lit up. So draw my circle, draw my line, and I'm filling it in, okay? And so from Earth, I'm looking back. If I'm standing here looking at it, it looks like the left side, okay? If it helps you to turn your paper around, to turn it like this, okay? Because now you're like, yeah, Miss Wallace, that makes sense. Now I can see the left side is lit up. then you can do that, okay, while you're drawing this. But you have to always think about, if I'm on Earth and I'm looking back towards it, it's the left side that I see, okay? So first quarter and last quarter, those are directly across from each other. Now we move into our last phase, phase 8. Same thing. I'm looking from Earth. I can just barely see a little sliver. So this is going to be our waning crescent. Okay, our waning crescent, because we're waning off the light. The light is slowly coming off of the moon as it moves back around here. So what does that look like from Earth? So now you draw your circle, and the majority of the moon is dark. We can just barely see this little sliver, okay? So looking back, just like this, if it helps, remember, turn your paper around. I'm on Earth and I'm looking at it. I can just barely see just a little bit of the moon. And so that is our waning crescent, okay? Now, here's some tips to remember. You go from new moon into the waxing phase. We're waxing on the light. If the moon is bright on the right, you're waxing on the light. You have a full moon directly across from a new moon, okay? You have a first and a last quarter directly across from each other. So sometimes a good rule of thumb, do your new moon and your full moon, and then do your quarter moons. Those are all the easiest, okay, those 4. Then we can come back in and fill in our gibbous and our crescents. Your gibbous are always closest to your full moon, and your crescents are always closest to your new moon. Because you'll notice these 3 here, new, waxing crescent, and waning crescent, I can barely see any of the moon with my crescent moons. I can't see any of it at all here, okay? And that has everything to do with our perspective from Earth and what the sun is striking, okay? Remember, it's going to take about 27 to 28 days for the moon to make one revolution around the Earth. But remember, we're also spinning and revolving around the sun while it is spinning and orbiting around us, okay? We're going to keep doing some other diagrams about this so you can learn the lunar phases, but please make sure that you ask your teacher any questions that you might have, okay?